They printed up a copy of Chris's book with the same cover, but instead of stuff about Chris's life in Japan, it just had tips about breastfeeding.
Japan.
Hello and welcome to the Abroad Japan podcast, probably the best way of learning about life in Japan without actually being in Japan. I'm your host Chris Broad, and we're joined as always by England's top Japan enthusiast, whose face you'll finally see if you're watching on YouTube, Mr. Pete Donaldson III. Pete, how the devil are you doing? Are you as nervous as I am about taking the podcast to YouTube?
I love that we've been doing this podcast for 5 long, arduous, stressful years, but for the first time you can see this podcast in full HD on that there YouTube, and Chris has got incredibly nervous, incredibly worried about what people will think. We've been doing this for 5 years, we've been spaffing out a lot of nonsense for 5 years, and you suddenly seem very concerned about the content of the podcast. I love it. I love seeing you on the back foot, Chris. I love it.
Well, it's because the podcast, because it's like audio only, right? And most folks don't understand how podcasts work. I didn't know how to listen to podcasts before I did it. It's like a little secret room that we have at the back of a shop, and we come on in and we'll tell you about things. And now it's on YouTube. It's like we've opened a new store, and anyone can come in. And more worryingly, people can see just all the food and drink that I consume while I do the podcast, right? Because we always talk about, like, oh, Chris, what are you drinking? What are you eating?
Yeah.
Now you can see the energy jelly, you can see the iced coffee, you can see the half-consumed Pocari sweat bottle, and this. Pete thought this was medicine. This is Porbitan D,
right?
And it's kind of like, it's in a medicinal bottle, right? And it's just like Red Bull on steroids. It's got like nicotine.
That's what I thought you'd got into, what is it the rappers drink? Purple Drank, where they mix cough syrup with like Jolly Ranchers and stuff.
It sounds like the Flaming Homer out of Simpsons.
Yes.
But, yeah, it's weird, man. It's weird to be here and doing this. I realise a lot of you are going to be listening to this anyway, normally. But you can check us out on YouTube, Abroad Japan Podcast YouTube channel. A lot of time went into thinking up that name, as you can tell.
Yeah.
But I'm here. It's kind of cool. We're doing this in the brand new studio that literally just opened 2 or 3 days ago. And as you can see, it looks pretty much the same. It's pretty much the same, except at the back. Instead of the Blade Runner projection, the electronic store's there now. And it feels a bit bigger and weightier, right?
So
what do you think?
So you're the person who's hoarding all those cathode ray tube televisions that are just so expensive these days. You're the one that's riding up the prices, for crying out loud. I've also got a television behind me, and one
showing off.
I'll probably just turn off because doesn't seem to be doing anything at the moment. That's the thing with like old sort of 70s, 80s tech. It's lovely to look at. You know, it takes you back to a more innocent times, but it's very hard to get working in 2023. It's difficult.
I mean, there's 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 6 TVs over there. Only 3 of them work. I think one of them, American Pete, broke like 2 years ago when I first opened the studio.
Welcome.
I let Pete in, right, which you should never do. And he was like, "Oh my god, a SNES!" And he went in the electronics store. He pulled some cables, and then 3 of the TVs just never came back on.
Oh dear!
So I'm not letting him in this studio. He's not coming in.
Well, I mean,
this time.
I am going to be visiting Japan pretty shortly, and I'll have to sneak in. Maybe I can get one of the tellies working because I've become very good at this sort of thing. In a very short period of time, because I had to, because I'm alone and I don't have any help.
I mean, you can come in. There's also a big 1970s TV. Obviously, if you are watching this, guys, you haven't seen the other side of the studio yet. It is spectacular. And I was going to do the podcast over there, but it's all a bit of a mess. There's lots of cables and things. I figured, like, maybe I'll start this whole month. We'll just do it like this in this room, and then maybe we'll move over there next time. But it's also because it's like an enclosed room set. The air conditioning doesn't get in, and it turns into like an oven, which is one major flaw in the height of summer, having a set like a 1970s house.
The great thing about Japan is that like most of it is very well air conditioned, but it's just those pockets where you actually have to get out into the streets at times. It's so goddamn close is the word I'd use. Just very, very close, hot, humid weather.
How British are you?
I
talking
know.
about the weather.
Complaining
Talking
about
about
the
a
weather.
little bit of rain. I've got to fly back to the UK in a few days, and there's like a typhoon coming. So the plane will just get like blown out the sky. And you're worried about 8 days of rain?
I am, yeah.
Get out.
I am.
Get
I
out.
like it.
Honestly. But seriously, guys, really exciting to be here on YouTube.
Yep.
I looked this up earlier because I don't know the stats. We've done 445 episodes
Oh, wow.
of the Abroad in Japan podcast. Isn't that insane?
So we're coming up to our 500th. And I presume I've probably deleted a few by accident when I've been uploading a new one. So, yeah, that's amazing. So we're coming up to our 500th anniversary. Brilliant.
Absolutely. And, you know, I think we're about to get a few new listeners who don't know anything about the podcast. We do have a little bit of a format. It isn't just two annoying white guys turn up and chat about shit. There is a...
Well,
all right,
that's... I mean, that's the formula of most podcasts, and this is a rather successful one.
I don't know about that, but the format is Pete and I catch up. Pete talks about the weather.
Yeah.
I talk about how I've eaten some fucking chicken and cheese, and fallen down the stairs. Then we, after a brief catch up, we have Story of the Week, where we read out a story sent in by you guys, usually something crazy and horrendous. Then we have the News of the Week. We talk about current affairs and things going on here in Japan. And then sometimes, if you're lucky, you might get Speedy Japanese, where we teach Pete some Japanese skills. And because he's coming to Japan in just a few weeks' time, for the first time in 3.5 years, you might need all the Japanese he can get. And we finish things off with 3 questions from the fax machine. And I do actually have a fax machine that I should try and dig out, because now we can physically have it.
Yes, you can
and
turn
we
it
can print
on.
it off. We could do it. A lot of effort, though, isn't it?
It's a lot of effort.
I don't think we'll do that. It's a lot of effort.
Let's make it very clear, this ain't going to happen. But you do have a fax machine. I'm very proud of you.
It's not going to happen.
No.
But, yeah, bit of a wild week. But I've the book's just come out as well.
Yes.
So really bundling a lot of things into a very short space of time here. Podcast launches on YouTube, book launches.
There's quite a few people sort of messaged me with pictures of their pre-order of the Abroad in Japan book, saying I'm supporting the podcast. I was like, this isn't supporting the podcast. This is supporting...
Pete's not even in it.
I'm not even in it. I'm not even mentioned. This isn't supporting the podcast. This is supporting Christopher's attempts to become a top 10 bestseller.
Sunday Times bestseller. It's happening. It's going to happen.
Happen.
We find out in like a week. It's
Nice.
going to be quite... I'm genuinely like nervous, because I really want that. I'm not going to write another book again, let's face it, unless it's like 100 things you shouldn't do in Japan. Could be a good book, to be fair.
Show me the money, Penguin. That's what I'd be saying.
Yeah.
Show me that if you
If
want
it
another
sells
one
well.
and it's successful, you show me the bloody money.
But if it sells well, they might be back. I'm under the same publisher. It's got Penguin, then there's Transworld, and they publish, you know, your favourites, like your Prince Harry book and your Richard Dawkins books, and then Abroad in Japan, bit of a step down.
All the big ones.
Actually, I don't know. I think, no, I'm not as good as Richard Dawkins. I'm not. No, Prince Harry. Don't
Prince
know.
Harry?
But anyway, let's not go there. But it's it's kind of nerve wracking, because only one shot at the Sunday Times bestseller title. Right? It's the first 2 weeks of when a book is launched, and then all the pre-orders. So if I haven't got it, I'm fucked. I'll never be a bestseller, and my dream is dead in the water, and I'll have to write another book.
I'm sure you've shifted a few copies. I know of at least 3 copies that have been sold.
Fantastic.
And I got a freebie, so...
You did. You should have bought one. Should have helped me on my goals thing.
Yeah.
But thank you to everyone that bought a book, and I hope you enjoy it. I hope you enjoyed reading it as much as I enjoyed writing it.
I like the bits about
I hate when people say that.
I like the bits about the breastfeeding. If
Don't
you're
start
unfamiliar with the previous episode of the Abroad in Japan podcast, Chris, some enterprising... were they Chinese, I think? It's an enterprising Chinese company.
I think
decided
American,
to...
actually.
Oh, American, right. They took
Yeah.
Chris's cover for his book, uploaded an e-book. No, it wasn't an e-book. It was an actual version of the book, wasn't it? Actual physical version of the book. They printed up a copy of Chris's book with the same cover, but instead of stuff about Chris's life in Japan, it just had tips about breastfeeding. They sold a few copies to some people who are fans of the show, fans of the channel.
I got like quite a few fakes. America did it because we have quite a few listeners and viewers there, and a few people like, this is hilarious. I bought the book. Yeah, this is really funny. What is this? This is going to be a limited edition one day. You're like, yeah. And then I got like one really sad, devastated person. He was like, I've waited a year for this book, and I finally ordered it. My mum bought it as a present for my birthday, and it arrived, and I opened the book, and all I found were tips on breastfeeding and the ins and outs and the highs and lows of breastfeeding.
Out of all the things they could have put in there, the breastfeeding just really makes me laugh, because they could have put like a car manual or like, I don't know, a guide to, I don't know, cocktails or something. But they, for some reason, they just put breastfeeding tips in there. Oh,
why?
Lordy. I don't know.
It is really weird.
You look like a guy who just knows how to breastfeed, man. What can I say?
It's not looking good here. I haven't been doing press-ups recently, but like, it is really weird. Like that person, the author, it said like Abroad in Japan, author Todd LB. So Todd LB, you bastard, it's your fault. Todd LB, he thought, I know what Abroad in Japan would do. Breastfeeding, isn't it? Ridiculous. But I literally, I do think if you have that copy, keep hold of that. It's going to be worth something someday. $10.
When the apocalypse comes and you meet a woman on a lone traveller on the road of life, and she's finding it hard to express milk.
Oh my God! Either that or firewood in the post-apocalypse. But anyway, let's crack on with story of the week. We've got a story this week from Dennis from Gothenburg, Sweden. Of course, Sweden. Hopefully, now the podcast is going on YouTube. It's a joke for those of you who don't know that on the podcast audio, most of our listeners are from Sweden. Either they're mostly from Sweden, or Swedish people just seem to message a lot more and tell their stories.
They've always got the best stories as well, and it's usually because Swedish people are tall and beautiful. They have tall and beautiful adventures in Japan.
That they are. But now we're on YouTube. Who knows? Will the Swedish demographic keep up? We're going to find out soon enough. But anyway, Dennis from Gothenburg says, hello, contoured Chris and perplexing Pete. My wife and I spent our month-long honeymoon this year in Japan, mid-June to mid-July, travelling around with unlimited train travel. Rest in peace, affordable Japanese rail pass. Yes, we'll get onto that later. After we spent a couple of days in Osaka, we went to Kumamoto for a couple of days. One day, we went to Kumamoto Castle to look at the impressive castle. The day was extremely hot, and we'd still not acclimatised to the heat, or for that matter, to the culture and the rules. After walking around the castle for a couple of hours, we decided to go down the road to go to the store and restaurants at the foot of the castle, since we were starting to get tired and my brain was turning into mush from exhaustion. We started to walk down the road when suddenly we heard a voice yelling, "Stop!" in Japanese and English. We looked around and a guard was motioning for us to come closer. It was at this moment we realised we were walking down in the middle of the road and not on the sidewalk. Fucking hell. What's going on there? My first thought was that it finally happened. We had our gaijin moment. We made our way over to the guard, embarrassed and bowing profusely, saying sorry and gomenasai. The guard then put his hand into a pocket on his shirt, front pocket, and I was certain we were going to be fined or something similar. To our surprise, the guard took out an an origami throwing star and handed it to me while smiling for me. He also took out an origami crane for my wife and gave it to her. "For you," he said, and waved us goodbye. As we kept walking down the sidewalk, our dumbfoundedness turned into laughter. We jokingly said we should maybe break the law again and see if we could gain more presents, which we did not. The following weeks were great, good interactions with other people around Japan, but our run-in with the law was special and something we couldn't stop talking about. We took special care of the origami that now live in our bookcase at our home. Thanks for the podcast, guys. My commute to and from work is much better when I hear your voices. Kind regards, Dennis from Gothenburg with his origami crane, showing that if you break the rules, you will be rewarded. Right, Pete?
And this is kind of why I really enjoy doing the podcast, because pretty much every week someone has a crazy experience with the law, with a hostelry owner who just goes above and beyond to make people feel special and make people feel welcome. That's a lovely thing about Japan, that like people do go the extra mile, and they do bloody love handing out paper origami throwing stars, it seems.
It's so random. I'd love to like restage this as a sketch, like the terror as the guard like reaches into his pocket and is like, origami star. And it's like, what the fuck? Why is that? That's brilliant.
While holding his gun.
That's great though. It just shows if you break the rules, you get rewarded. Gaijin smash.
Yeah.
Apparently.
That's your Gaijin pass.
It reminds me of that time I drove through the toll booth without paying and saved some money. Don't do that.
Please
don't break the rules.
People do get very flustered. But I think if you are ever going to drive through a toll booth, do it in Japan as a non-Japanese person, because they get so flustered. They're never going to stop you.
No. And, Worst case, you get an origami star.
Yeah, exactly.
What they called shuriken, right? The stars, the shuriken, the one where you like ninjas throw them, right?
Yeah.
Although I imagine if it's made from paper, it might not be quite as potent or as
quite
powerful
as devastating
as their metal counterpart. But anyway, what's going on in Japan this week, Pete? Well, I guess one thing is we're recording today a little bit ahead of schedule. It's August the 6th. That is the anniversary of the Hiroshima bombing.
Right.
And of course, you guys might be familiar with the whole Barbenheimer situation. I say situation. For most people in the West, Barbenheimer is a joke just because of the sheer ridiculousness of having Barbie play against the story of making the atomic bomb. And a lot of people are curious, is I can't say his
Poppenheimer.
Little
Daddy Poppenheimer.
It's like a restaurant, isn't it? Oppenheimer, it's not screening in Japan.
Right.
We don't know when it's going to come out here. Warner Brothers, they haven't really elaborated on why it's not come out here, but I think to be respectful,
yes,
because the film's coming out in the weeks leading up to the anniversary of the Hiroshima bombing. But the people in Japan, our netizens in Japan, are not taking it so well comedically. And interestingly, one of my former students from 7-8 years ago, a really nice girl, she posted on Facebook that she was really angry about Barbenheimer.
Right.
But what she posted, it seemed like she didn't really know. It's one of those things. Like to us, it might seem like, why is that offensive? Like Barbenheimer, it's just ridiculous, isn't it? Barbie and Oppenheimer.
Yeah.
But then in Japan, what's being played out here, when you see photos or images of this, it's literally, you've got Barbie and Ken, and then a mushroom cloud. And that isn't as funny to see something like that, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, take us away, Pete. What's going on?
So there's been a bit of a social media storm swirling in Japan after the US social media accounts for the Barbie movie acknowledged the Barbenheimer mashup memes. A lot of people got very upset. Warner Brothers Japan headed over to its own Japanese language Barbie account on X, the platform previously known as Twitter, and basically apologised that they were participating in the whole Barbie Oppenheimer kind of memery. Obviously, over here, it's very funny, and it's been quite a long-running little kind of meme that we're mixing kind of Barbie and Oppenheimer and stuff. But the US social media accounts for Warner Brothers have to be a bit more thoughtful about things, I think, and a bit more respectful. So if they get involved, it's seen to be kind of like diminishing the effects of what was a devastating event at the end of the Second World War, and if they don't, they seem like they're not much fun. So they're kind of caught between two posts, I think, in this. Quite difficult, isn't it?
It is a bit like the atomic bombings are taken very seriously in Japan. It's the aspect of World War II that's sort of taught the most here,
right?
From my experience, what I've witnessed anyway. And anyone that's gone to Hiroshima, like myself, have you been to Hiroshima? You haven't, you, Pete? I've
been to Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I think the Peace Park, I think it's a very affecting trip. I've said it before. We did turn up, and there were two Marines that I met. One of which I decided to. He was drinking like a strong zero at 11 o'clock in the morning. And he was just he was coming out with some absolute lines, and I was just like, mate, like, have a bit of respect. Like, we were right in front of the bank in which obviously the atomic bomb was dropped, and
Hiroshima is somewhere I really recommend going if you ever come to Japan. I never forget standing in front of the they call it the A-bomb dome, the Genbaku Dome, and it's the dome. It used to be a music hall, and I think it was built in the 1920s. And
I thought
the
it was
atomic
a bank.
bomb went.
Oh, interesting.
I think it was some sort of community centre of sorts.
Right.
But the bomb went off directly above it, and the pressure came down, and the concrete sort of structure maintained. The concrete brick structure maintained itself because the pressure was coming down from above rather from the side.
Yeah.
And one of the few things that remain. I'll never forget like standing in front of it and just being in awe of this structure that I'd seen so much over my lifetime in history books and whatnot. It was a really moving thing. But the museum itself is really moving and demands to be viewed. And whatever your stance on the atomic bomb and if it should have been used, if it shouldn't, it's the most important thing you come away from is thinking, let's not use these again. Let's learn from this, and let's learn from the mistakes of war. But highly recommend going. And it demands to be visited. Hiroshima. It's an incredible city, and also very inspiring. Like just seeing a city survive a bombing like that, 70,000 people wiped out, killed in an instant. But you go there, and it's a very flourishing city. It's a very successful, very vibrant, wonderful place. And to see it in the history books flattened by the bomb, and then go there and walk the streets and see what it's like now rejuvenated and rebuilt. It's a very powerful experience. And you come away with a lot of hope as well. It's a beautiful place, Hiroshima. Check it out. We'll be back in just a moment, guys, with the stories, comments, and questions in the fax machine.
Wow.
And we're back with the fax machine. What have we got this week from our listeners, Mr. Donaldson?
We got a message from Sean from Wisconsin. A longer time listener, says Sean. Hello, Cheesehead Chris and Polka Pete.
Cheesehead?
God knows.
Cheesehead?
My question, every time we do these emails, somebody comes up with a new name for each of us. My question for you both is this. What do you normally do for breakfast? Here in Wisconsin, there's a big brunch culture. To go out late in the morning after a long night of drinking and get some Bloody Marys, mimosas, and delicious fried foods. I've not seen or heard much discussion other than morning markets. Do you have any places you would recommend, Sean from Wisconsin? I mean, good God, I love a Bloody Mary, but a Bloody Mary in the morning to a bit of hair of the dog, I can't be doing with it, to be honest. It's just a little. It's just too. It's just like day drinking after night drinking just does not work for me, and I'm a big fan of drinking.
I mean, this isn't a normal situation though, Sean, is it? Unless everyone in Wisconsin goes out and gets drunk every night, which maybe they might well do. I don't know. I mean, I usually have like a protein shake for breakfast or something proteiny.
Off to the gym. Off to the gym with your protein shake. Lovely.
I'm in the gym in 4 months. It's a disaster, mate. But no, I just have a protein shake, and it's pretty bad. I don't have a routine. Although it could be worse. If I was in the UK, it would be like a fry-up every morning. Or sometimes, actually, Charlotte makes like an avocado egg thing. And
avocado
it's
toast
lovely.
with chili flakes and a bit of Tabasco.
Yeah.
Lovely old job. I would say
Charlotte
with
that.
Marmite and avocado is very nice, actually. If you're outside of the UK or Australia... try and get hold of some... they do this new version of Marmite. It has truffle flavour in it. Like truffle oil in Marmite. And it really works. My partner hates it. But, I think it's delicious.
I mean, the last time I had Marmite is when I poisoned my Japanese friends in Yamagata back like 7-8 years ago. And let's do a rerun with the truffle version. Maybe they'll like it with the truffles in. But Marmite plus truffles equals no. I don't imagine that's good, Pete, honestly.
I like the Natsuki breakfast, which is just 5 cigarettes and a cup of coffee.
What was it he said, Natsuki? My breakfast, coffee, cigarette, and 2 cigarettes. It was like brilliant. And when he climbed Mount Fuji... I think he had the same thing. He did have his coffee and his 2 cigarettes.
And 2 cigarettes, nice.
It saw him through. Yeah, it saw him through. You got a question from Danielle. He says, "Evening, carrier bag Chris and Pickpocket Pete. In the UK, we all have to pay for carrier bags. This is the same in Japan, or are they too polite to ask you to pay for one? In the UK at the moment, it's 30 pence for a bag. Would you suggest if I come to Japan that I bring a bag for life, or do they generally have no issue with the bag tax?" Thank you, Danielle. You could bring a bag for life. It'd be weird packing a bag for life on a trip to Japan, wouldn't it? Would you do that, Pete?
I think it'd be adorable to just, instead of taking a bag or some suitcases, just 2 big Sanos orange bag for life.
To be fair, I did bully my cameraman Paul the other day. We were on a shoot on an island, and we walked up to a supermarket, and one of our friends we were with was like, "Has anybody got a bag for life?" And I was like, "Who the bloody hell has a bag for life?" And Paul went, "Oh, I've got one here," and pulled it out of his camera rucksack. And I was like, "Oh my God, Paul!" But fair play to him, it was very useful.
Yeah.
You do have to pay for bags, but it's like 5 yen,
Right.
yen, which is like basically free. So
Right.
yeah. But let's save the planet. We got one last question from Una Mandler, who says, "Hello, Chris and Pete. Sorry, I'm not good with alliterations, like everyone else."
Good.
He sends in questions. My question for both Chris and Pete is: everyone knows about Shibuya Scramble Crossing and Golden Gai. What are your personal, secret, must-see places for someone who's about to spend a year and hopefully more in and around Tokyo? Kind regards, soon to be in Tokyo, Una Mandler. I'll toss my hat in the ring and say Shimokitazawa. I find since moving to Tokyo, I spend a fair bit of time in Shimokitazawa. It's kind of this trendy area. It's a little bit west of Shibuya.
Yes.
Lots of shops and boutique places. It's kind of a cool place to chill. And I'd only been there once, like 7-8 years ago. As a tourist, it's not worth going. But if you live in Tokyo, it's a cool place to spend time. Lots of cool like coffee shops, hidden restaurants. I found a bar that actually looks a lot like this set. Maybe the set designers stole the design. There's also like a Yoda. Is it a Yoda bar or a Star Wars bar?
Oh, yeah.
It's just a man with loads of Star Wars paraphernalia and Yoda. It's kind of cool. What about you, Pete?
I'm to be honest, it's really weird. Like, I was literally just on my phone there trying to remember the place that you said. Cause I was like, well, it's got like a lovely little kind of like trendy second-hand clothing kind of vibe to it. There's like loads of little shops. There's a great little store that sells sort of old football tops, and like if you're used to buying like retro football soccer tops in the UK or the US or wherever you may reside, if you go to Japan, people look after their stuff so nicely. You're in a situation where when you buy these football tops, and you know it won't be like just J League tops, but they'll have like stuff from like Serie A from like the 90s and stuff. Like proper decent retro tops, but they're all in excellent condition, and they're pretty affordable. Like J League tops, in particular, are very expensive when you buy them on eBay or online on these kind of like retro soccer shops. But the ones they've got in Shibakitazawa they're really, really nice, really, really affordable. And I spent a good afternoon there last time I was there, and I will return shortly.
I'm sensing a money-making scheme. This is when you come over here, just get a big suitcase, stuff them all in.
Bag for life.
Flog them back in the UK.
Bag for life,
yeah, bring the bag for life, stuff them in. Genius move. Keep the stories, questions, comments coming in to AbroadInJapanPodcast@gmail.com. That's how you guys can submit your questions and stories. For all of the podcast. We should probably make it a little bit more simple now. We've come a long way. 400 episodes. We should probably just be like podcast at abroad.
Podcast@gmail.com.
Yeah.
That's not going to make the audio listeners feel very special. Now we're on the telly. We've given you a new cool email address. I'm not having this. People have been listening for 5 years. Email Chris. Have a go at him.
Well, the Abroad Japan Podcast at Gmail address, it's like the great filter, right? It gets rid of all the spam and all, because it takes effort. It's like, oh, fucking hell. And some people mess up the letters and they're not worthy of sending
not worthy of your attention.
It's like a little Indiana Jones quest. Type in the very long, cumbersome email, you get your questions answered. But we'll be back later in the week, guys. For now, thanks for joining us in our first ever YouTube podcast. This is going to be happening. 2 episodes every week here on YouTube. And continuing, as we always did, over on iTunes, on Spotify, and everything else, Acast. But, guys, thanks for joining us. I'm going to finish off this coffee and run off, but we'll see you later in the week. For now, have a good one. We'll see you right back here, all over again, on the Abroad Japan Podcast. Bye for now.
Bye!